And welcome back to Square Off. Republican U.S. Senate candidate Kari Lake tried, sort of, to make amends last week for her relentless attacks on the late Republican Senator John McCain and his family. Here's a mashup of some of what Lake has said about McCain over the last few years or so, and her explanation for some of it last week on KTAR radio.
John McCain may be dead, but he is reaching up from the grave trying to keep power on Arizona.
Are we going to go back the old way of doing things? The McCain Mafia running the show?
We don't have any McCain Republicans in here, do we?
All right, if you get the hell out.
We drove a stake through the heart of the McCain machine.
Said in jest, and I think if John McCain, who had a great sense of humor, would have heard it, he would have laughed.
Tweeted an invitation to Meghan McCain to get together over coffee. The late senator's daughter responded, "No peace," followed by a word that rhymes with witch. Lake's comments came in a rare local interview where she faced some tough questions, credit to KTAR. Why did Lake do the interview, and why is she suddenly trying to paper over her attacks on the McCains? Joining us to break it all down are political insiders, Republican Paul Bentz, Senior Vice President at Highground Consulting and their polling and data guy, and Democrat Mike Haener, a partner at Lumen Strategies. He's worked for Governor Katie Hobbs and former Governor Janet Napolitano. Welcome, Mike, and welcome back, Paul. Let's get going. So why is Kari Lake trying to make amends now, at this moment?
Well, first I would say she's not quite successfully making amends, but I think the goal here is recognizing that she cannot win statewide office without winning the large majority of Republicans, and she has a McCain problem. She is, I don't know about you, but when you make a stabbing motion about somebody, I don't think you're joking, and I think the McCain folks see that, and not only can she not say that in one audience, but then continue to go back to election denial and the other items that she keeps latching on to. She's trying to portray one persona publicly, and then in social media and other places, she maintains that primary persona, and it's very difficult to factor the two.
But why now? Is this something she realizes she needs to do? Maybe she's being told to do by the National Republican Senate Committee?
Definitely. When you lose one election legitimately for governor, and then you decide to run for another statewide office, and you're behind in a three-way race, and part of your problem is that you've alienated a large segment of the Republican voting bloc, you need to try and make amends. But I agree with Paul. She's not doing it very well.
You know, I want to give her some credit. She might be right about, well, not necessarily the joking part, but McCain might have brushed it off. It seems to me in that interview, what would have outraged McCain in particular was her saying the Ukraine war is over and really avoiding the subject of Vladimir Putin.
I mean, absolutely. I think the policy perspective still aligning with Trump. This is something that McCain warned long about concerns about Putin and Russia and the Ukraine. And certainly, even if she says she's joking, the McCain family clearly is not laughing. They don't see the joke there. And the supporters, I mean, he is a well-known icon in the state of Arizona, still has an incredible amount of loyal people. I mean, he is a national figure and incredibly well-known. She needs not only that Republican base, but she also needs that portion of independents that also loved him for being a maverick and for being someone that stood up to people like Putin, and she's certainly not fitting that task right now.
Mike, you mentioned the polling. There was recent polling just this past week showing Ruben Gallego, Democrat Ruben Gallego, congressman, leading a head-to-head race against Lake and also leading in a three-way race that would include independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who, as we've been saying for months, has not announced whether she's running for re-election, though she is running at a time. You think those polling numbers, Lake is seeing the same numbers?
So my bet would be yes. Again, there are a variety of numbers out there that show her behind, and you can't win if you're going to alienate part of your own voting bloc, which is the Republican Party. And again, as Paul pointed out, independents who used to be Republicans still lean that way. And John McCain was someone that they voted for on a regular basis, and I don't believe he ever lost an election in this state.
She's talked about pivoting to win over those folks, says she's won over some. Can she do it, yes or no?
I don't think so.
Well, the issue is that 20 years ago she probably could have, but with the advent of social media, the proliferation of video, we just have too much video and too much footage and clips of her saying things that counteract what she's trying to pretend now. It was a lot easier to pivot in the past, but we have evidence now. They can keep throwing it in her face. I mean, groups immediately after the radio interview had full clips ready to go, pointing out where she was contradicting herself, and that's going to create a major challenge for her.
They're called receipts. They're called receipts.
Right.
Let's move on. Here in Arizona, politicians like to pick fights with their East Coast counterparts. Last week, it was Republican County Attorney Rachel Mitchell's turn. Mitchell said she would refuse to extradite to New York a murder suspect who's being held here in 2 stabbings. Here's what Mitchell said. Then we'll hear from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, his response.
Having observed the treatment of violent criminals in the New York area by the Manhattan DA there, Alvin Bragg, I think it's safer to keep him here.
I'm not going to stand by and have someone cheapen our process, lie to the public, and really denigrate the great work that the career public servants are doing in my office. I'm not going to stand by for it.
Rachel Mitchell took a swipe at Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, just saying he doesn't have a handle on violent crime. Bragg saying he's not going to stand for this. Mike, you've worked in the governor's office. Governors handle extradition requests. What's your take on this? Rachel Mitchell saying she's going to refuse to extradite their murder suspect, someone who's accused of committing crimes here.
Generally, and I've not talked to the governor's office about this, but generally I think the governor's office is likely not going to get involved in this. The county attorney is going to prosecute this individual for the crimes that he's alleged to have committed here. If he is convicted, or once he's convicted, he will likely then be extradited to New York to face charges there. And if he's convicted there, he'll likely serve time either in New York or here, likely a very long time, either in New York or here, assuming he's convicted. And I don't think the governor's office is going to get in the middle of this.
Yeah, the governor's office told me late this past week they're looking at this, but the law really handcuffs what Rachel Mitchell can do. It says this man has to be tried here first in Arizona.
But it's also good Republican politics. The only place that we don't like as much as California would be New York as Republicans. So saying she's going to turn over somebody to New York instead of prosecuting him here would make her appear weak on crime. She isn't in a re-election year. I think it's very good politics on her part to be tough on crime, to follow the law, and to prosecute this individual, and then let New York have their time with him. But he's here. They've caught him here in Arizona, and so she's going to do her best to enforce the law, and I think that's good politics for her.
And it is. It's very good politics, and that goes back to kind of the tweet, the social media, the headline. The law says she gets to prosecute him. So why not just say that? Our law says this is how we're going to do this. We'll send him to you after that, rather than this, I'm not going to extradite.
And in case there's any doubt, Rachel Mitchell's been a prosecutor for 30 years.
Yeah.
She surely knows the law on extradition, though it is kind of odd for a tough on crime prosecutor who still won't let a murder suspect, go back to New York where family members want to see justice done. Isn't that, I see what she's doing. I see your point, but isn't that kind of a tough?
No. I think Rachel Mitchell is doing the right thing. I think the messaging might not have been the right messaging, but her job is to prosecute crimes that happen here. She will do that. If he's convicted, he'll serve time here and then go to New York for that trial. So the family in New York will get their justice at that time, but so do the family members here need that as well.
And she's sworn to protect the Arizona taxpayers and the Arizona victims, and a crime's a crime, so she should enforce that crime and then turn it over to New York. I think from her perspective, she's in the right on this one. And now, was there a little bit of political grandstanding? Of course there was, but that's part of the back and forth here when you're going against a Democratic opponent from another state. It seems to make a lot of sense on her part.
A Democratic opponent who happens to be prosecuting the Republican Party's presidential nominee, Donald Trump, in a trial that starts in just a few weeks. All right, we're going to